What do we learn about the political situation in Israel upon David's return from exile? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse by verse study of the book of 2 Samuel on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 40 to 43. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 40. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Samuel chapter 19, beginning at verse 40. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him. And all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king, and said to the king, Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen you away, and brought the king his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan? So all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense? Or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 shares in the king. Therefore, we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. David has now crossed over the Jordan, returning from exile when his son Absalom overthrew him. He has dealt with some men who have helped and hindered him during his time period away. He supposedly forgave Shimei for cursing him, but as we'll see in 1 Kings, that forgiveness wasn't really true. He dealt with Mephibosheth, who it turns out was slandered by Ziba in order to get David to think that Mephibosheth was disloyal. Instead of returning all of Mephibosheth's land to him, though, and dealing harshly with Ziba, he only returned half and gave Ziba the other half due to Ziba helping David out with provisions as he fled Jerusalem. This wasn't fair to Mephibosheth, but it is what David did. And then David blessed Barzillai, who had provided him with provisions while he stayed in Mahanaim. David was wanting Barzillai to come and live with him in Jerusalem, but Barzillai was old, and so requested that he be able to return home and die there. Instead of him, though, Barzillai requested that David take his son Chimham to be with him as a reward for Barzillai serving David loyally while in exile, something that David did. So with David now fully crossed over the Jordan, the scene shifts to Gilgal. Gilgal has been an important place in Israel's history. It is located close to where Jericho would have been on the west side of the Jordan River. It is where Israel first stopped after crossing the Jordan, and where their camp remained during much of the early conquest of Canaan. Gilgal is also where the kingdom was renewed, and Saul made king over Israel a second time following his defeat of the Ammonites when they attacked the men of Jabesh Gilead. And it is here in Gilgal again where David is received, returning from exile. And while this should have been a happy occasion, it quickly turned into anything but that. Recall from earlier in the chapter that it was the northern tribes in Israel that first initiated David's return. Judah, along with Simeon, who largely lived among Judah, sat back until the urging of Zadok the priest and Abiathar caused them to come. And yet, when they came, they took the lead in bringing David across, much to the dismay of the other 10 tribes, some of which seemingly haven't arrived when David began to cross over. It is said that all the people of Judah escorted David over, while only half of Israel did. This half would have likely been the 3 tribes from the east side of the Jordan where David had been living, Benjamin, and possibly Ephraim. The representatives of the other tribes, as we said a few moments ago, probably hadn't completely arrived yet, due to them having to travel a further distance to get to Gilgal. This lack of waiting on Judah's part, and with them taking the leading role, was insulting to the northern tribes, because after all, it was their idea to bring David back. Now Judah responded that David was from their tribe, and so it is only natural for them to come and take the lead in bringing the king back. Moreover, they told Israel that during his reign, that despite being from their tribe, they didn't enrich themselves because of this, a likely shot at the northern tribes, for Saul said that he had enriched Benjamin during his reign in 1 Samuel 22:7. Now you can imagine that this explanation didn't please the northern tribes one bit, for they told Judah that they had 10 shares of the king, meaning that together they are larger than Judah and therefore shouldn't be despised by their southern counterparts. This rivalry here really shows us the political fault lines in Israel that really had existed since their settling in the Promised Land. Judah had been given the promise that kings would come from their tribe, yet the sons of Joseph were given the birthright. Joshua came from Ephraim, and the tabernacle dwelt in Ephraim for almost the first 300 years, meaning that Ephraim was the political capital of Israel up until the time of Eli. Yet even with Saul being made their king, at least he was from Benjamin, which, even though this wasn't Ephraim, it was still counted at that time as being among the tribes that weren't Judah. However, with the capture of Jerusalem and the king and the Ark of the Covenant dwelling there, things were changing in Israel, and not for the better in the minds of the tribes from the north. Sure, while things were going good and everyone was prosperous, these disagreements could be papered over, as it were. But why do you suppose that Absalom had such an easy time stealing away the hearts of the people? Largely because as David withdrew from public life after he got older and after his sin with Bathsheba, it made it easier for discontentment to rise. And while David was largely known for uniting Israel and Solomon was known for enriching it, this period of unity was really only skin deep. For below the surface, this rivalry existed that not 50 years later would lead to a permanent rending of the kingdom apart into the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. But let's not think that it started during the days of Rehoboam, for it did not. That undercurrent of discontentment and rivalry between north and south existed long before that, as is evident here, an event that was supposed to unite them under David. And as it is with rivals, Judah didn't take kindly to Israel's rebuke, which will directly lead into another rebellion, something we'll cover, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 1 to 13, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.